But let's go across to Mayuresh Joshi, who joins in with his perspective. Mayuresh, good to have you on the show. At 2,300 crores, do you think that Wipro has delivered a decent set?
Afternoon, Tanveer. Yes, if you go by the management transcript in the last quarter, they were expecting a robust growth to come through on a quarter-on-quarter basis, specifically on the IT services front. So yes, that is a very reasonable number that they have posted. I'm not sure of the EBIT margins, so if you can help me with that.
You know, I just can't right now, but we're trying to get those details. I think we were largely working with a 50 basis points cut in EBIT margins quarter on quarter at 17.8% versus 18.3%. So I don't know what they've delivered on that front, but they've also come out with a bonus issue. So that's something that will keep investors enthused as well as far as the earnings go. But on the revenue side as well, we are looking at the total income number right now. I think the absolute revenue number will come in just a bit, but around 12,200. Would you say that a flattish performance on the top line is something that investors had factored in?
Oh yes, again, I think what Wipro has delivered historically has been a very flattish trajectory in terms of revenue growth. So even in rupee terms, as you just mentioned, the figure.
Who's the other guy?
It is, yes, it is flattish. So in that sense, I think the revenue compression that we've seen for Wipro on the traditional IT services that it manages or ekes out has been quite in line with what the expectation was. So I think the management commentary again should give us a fair indication. But again, I think there is going to be stickiness in terms of client discretionary spending on all fronts, and as digitalization still starts taking place on a more robust way, my own sense is that you'll still expect to hear a very sluggish kind of commentary from the management for the year ahead.
Don't know how much to read into this, because I think it's just the only flash that's come in between all the details about earnings, and they've reappointed Azim Premji as chairman. Does that mean he gets back into business? Mayuresh, how would you read into this announcement?
I think very difficult to arrive at a conclusion. But yes, I think wait for management commentary more. But I think the presence of Mr. Premji is essential for Wipro at this point of time, as they're still evolving compared to the other peers. And they've clearly lagged behind. So the presence of Mr. Premji on the board in an advisory front or in any role, whatever, I think is going to be a huge kind of a positive in terms of the stock. But again, I think the numbers do the talking. So the numbers have been sluggish. I think the management commentary in terms of the business environment going ahead is going to be key for the stock, specifically in terms of the environment that we are operating out of, where discretionary spending still looks very, very patchy for the IT sector as a whole.
Right. Urmil also joins in. Urmil Shah, research analyst, institutional equities at IDBI Capital. Urmil, what do you take away from the numbers thus far? We are still awaiting the details on the margins, but I think optically flat performance on the top line. You're looking at a decent show on the bottom line, Q on Q, as well as a bonus announcement.
So clearly, it would be difficult to comment on the standalone
because I
numbers.
just want to add in that the EBIT margin is coming at 18.9%, which is higher than what they did last quarter. That is quarter 3 of FY17, and higher than what the ET Now poll was expecting the number to be at 17.8%. That's a good 1 percentage point increase, 100 basis points increase in margins at the operating level. Your comments?
Yeah, so I guess what you were calling out, it should be the IT services EBIT margin. So yes, on the face of it, the margins are better than what we were expecting. And also the standalone numbers prima facie look positive, but we will need to wait for what are the consolidated numbers, and more importantly, what do they guide for Q1. We are expecting 0 to 2% CC growth guidance to come in for Q1.
Right. Okay. What we are awaiting very closely is what they guide for, because as viewers would recall, Wipro always guides for 1 quarter forward. global IT revenues growth. So we're waiting that growth guidance for Q1 of FY18, because that will hold the key in trying to understand how they are looking at things unfolding for a fairly tight business environment into the start of the new financial year. So I'm looking at that number. That's the only number that matters at this juncture. If you could have that number on air, that would be key. In fact, I'm told we can go across to Pranay. Pranay, do you have those details aside of the beat that we've seen on the top line, the bottom line, as well as the EBIT margins for IT services? What about Q1 global IT revenue growth guidance?
Well, Tanveer, we are still awaiting the press release. So as of now, only the result sheet has come out so far, in which I think you've already highlighted. But just to reiterate, the rupee revenues are up about 1.5% on a sequential basis. We were building in 0.7, 0.8%. Also, there is a good beat on the EBIT. That has grown by about 4.5%, and therefore you can see the margin expansion for the IT services by nearly 60 basis points, coming in at 18.9%. I think there would be some cross-currency tailwind also for the company over here, besides whatever operational efficiency they managed to extract. Something we'll come to know in detail from the press conference that will follow in the next half hour. Besides that, what has come about is the 1:1 bonus issue. So that I think is something which will keep the stock positive in tomorrow's session. The dollar revenue from the press release as well as the Q1 guidance is yet to come.
Yeah, but that one holds the key to understanding how they're looking at the business environment currently. So we'll try and get you the details on the global IT revenues guidance for Q1 FY18. But Mayuresh, now that we have the top line numbers as well, where they have shown a decent performance too, I think they've beaten estimates on all parameters. As I look at the consolidated numbers, you're looking at 14,000 crores coming in on consolidated revenues, versus an ET Now poll expectation of 13,870 crores. And I think the beat in the EBITDA margins of the IT services at 18.9% is a stunner.
Oh yes, I think the EBIT outperformance on the IT services front is definitely better than what most analysts on the street had pegged in. And even on the top line or the bottom line performance as far as IT services are concerned, and on the console numbers for in rupee terms, yes, I think the performance has been much better than what we or the street were expecting. So largely, again, as you rightly pointed out, Tanveer, I think it's going to be the guidance for the next quarter that Wipro will guide through. And specifically on the IT services front, when you're also looking at the next 2 quarters having some amount of revisions coming through. So what are they going to guide on, both the dollar revenue aspect, the cross-currency aspect, as well as the EBIT margin guidance, if the management can give some?
Okay. I need some more context to this piece of news. I'm not very clear. I know that Mr. Premji was holding the chairman position, as of 2015. Pardon my ignorance over here, but Urmil, you'll have to run me through the top management involvement, because he's been reappointed as chairman and MD for 2 years.
Okay, so if it is reappointment as a chairman and MD both, then yes, this means that his involvement in the transition phase definitely gets increased. To that extent, I would say I would read that as a positive for the stock.
So Umar, let's talk. Yeah, first, I want to get your verdict on what these numbers do for the stock in tomorrow's session, because we are going to be wrapping up the earnings analysis in a bit, and then we'll talk on a comparative basis. How do you look at Wipro versus an Infosys as well as a TCS? So first, your assessment on what these numbers, what Mr. Premji coming back into business, his reappointment as MD would mean for the stock price tomorrow.
So as I said, Mr. Premji coming back is positive. It strengthens the bandwidth at the top management very well, because it's important at this phase where Wipro is going through restructuring of the business and going to towards the targeted industry leading growth. Second, as regards the Q4 results, the results are clearly a beat, so on that basis that is also positive. So unless and until the guidance is lower than say 0 to 2% on constant currency terms for the first quarter of FY18, I think this should have a positive impact on the stock.
Okay, and what's your internal target on Wipro?
So currently we are having a hold recommendation on the stock with a target price of 477.
Alright, let's bring up the year-to-date chart of Wipro and also the 52-week chart of Wipro, because in the pecking order, there has been little expected from Wipro on a quarter-on-quarter basis for the last, I think, 2 years, given the fact that TCS and Infosys have been outperformers. There you go, 52-week performance, 11% down. I'm sure that the year-to-date performance. So this one has been a ranked underperformer within the top 5 bellwether IT names. Mayuresh, same question to you. Does this earnings review fire up the stock tomorrow? If so, what would be your target?
The consolidated numbers, as Urmila is also pointing out, much better than what we had expected as well. And largely, yes, I think, as you pointed out, the under-ownership and the underperformance of Wipro has been quite evident, not just for the last 2 quarters, but for the last 4 to 8 quarters. So I think if the company is able to replicate this performance in the coming quarter as well, and if the management guidance, as we are all talking about, is held out on a very strong footing in constant currency terms, I think the stock will show a decent amount of appreciation in tomorrow's trade. And as I said, if they're able to continue their performance, it probably reflects in the stock price moving higher. So I think, yes, from the current market price, I think our target price is around 12 to 15% higher where Wipro trades at this point of time. But let's understand the management commentary, rework our numbers, and probably then revise our target prices as well.
All right. So definitely, as both our analysts believe, these numbers are promising and would merit a relook and a review of the stock of Wipro in tomorrow's session. Whether it gets re-rated substantially, we'll have to see. But I think out of the entire earnings announcement, what stood out for me is the outlook for the business going forward, and Mr. Aseem Premji's appointment as MD. I think he was chairman, so that position holds, but his reappointment as MD and chairman for the next 2 years is something that the markets would definitely cheer. We'll take a break then. That's Wipro's Q4 earnings report. A good set of numbers coming in from Wipro. Good outperformance on the margin front. The news and updates will carry on the channel, so stay tuned.